ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into Part 4 of the series What If Deku Had Unknow Adaptability Quirk? So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Midoriya opens his eyes to a destroyed city. The area around him was reduced to rubble, and in the middle of it all, for one floating in the air with a large breathing apparatus covering his head and a prosthetic arm. On the ground was a bloodied Bestgenist. Midoriya used Quirk's sight to see if there was anyone who was still trapped under the rubble. He saw a few civilians deep in the ground and rapped them out into UA. He looked at a partially destroyed wall and saw Momo, Kaminari, Kirishima, and Tenya hiding behind it. Midoriya, fancy meeting you here. How was your time at the lab? Could have been better. Tamura, I'm afraid that this is how we part ways. I have so much more to teach you, but the situation demands that I fight to ensure your freedom. But Sensei, all for one. All Might comes crashing down from the sky with a dive kick, which was repelled by an air cannon. I believe it's time for your grand exit, Tamura. So long as you are free, the League will never fall. All for one tries to use his warping quirk on Tamura and his group, but it doesn't activate. In fact, he doesn't feel the quirk. Tamura was suddenly covered in a clear slime-like green ooze, sending them away. Warping taken. Radio waves taken. Search taken. Quirk synergy. Quirk sight. Search. Quirk progenitor. Weakness detection. Let's test that out. Izuku activates weakness detection on All Might, and a timer appeared above his head. Remaining quirk time, 10:36. He is getting close to his limit. Midoriya then looked over to All for One, and his entire body was surrounded by a green glow with a little box to the side with an arrow pointing at All for One, and the word weak written in it. A few snickers could be heard from the vestiges. All for One sees the outline of Tamura, and his group disappear and realizes something. He has my quirk. He has my quirk. All for One rushes Midoriya to punch him with his prosthetic arm, which Midoriya blocks with his palm. Give them back. All Might clocks him in the chin, denting his face mask. All for One staggers back holding his mask. Not very heroic of the number one to attack someone unguarded. You've never been to one to give such courtesy. All for One uses air cannons to try and blast All Might away, but All Might dissipates any that he shoots out. You will not hurt a single soul here. Oh, I wouldn't count on that, All Might. A building began shifting, about to collapse as a woman and child were in an opening under the rubble. All for One raised his arm as it began to bulge and expand. Spikes and metal scrap grew out of the engorged flesh. How do you like it? A special combination I cooked up for a special occasion. All Might stood in front of the civilians. I will not let you harm anyone else. Oh, All Might always the one to sacrifice themselves, but you know you can't save everyone. You couldn't even save your master's grandson. Tenko Shimura. You will pay for what you did. All for One was surprised that All Might knew, but no matter. He raised his mutated arm, drew back, and launched a shock wave at All Might. The result of All Might being injured by the attack didn't come into fruition as a green warp gate opened in the path of his fist, sending the blow back into All for One's mask, destroying it. All for One is sent into the rubble, a small trickle of blood leaking out of his mouth. All Might turns to look at the civilians, sees them fall into a green portal. All that power, yet you still make the same mistakes. Midoriya decays the anti-quirk cuff off his neck, as All for One pulls himself up with a frown and rushes him, his arm still engorged. Midoriya blocks the blow, but it blows apart the flesh on his arm, leaving his muscles and skeleton exposed. Midoriya's multiple regeneration quirks completely healed his arm, to the shock of All for One, as his own regeneration quirk did not work that fast. What? How? The good doctor was a great tour guide. All for One rushes Midoriya again, trying to get a hold of him, but he was blasted back by a dark beam, shot from the multiple arms grown from Midoriya's back. All for One dashes around to try and avoid the beams, but many of them curved to land directly on his chest. You really should have been smarter when choosing which quirks to take. After all, quirks are full of surprises. All Might watches as his master's killer was being played around with like a cat playing with their food. Gran Torino arrives and lands right next to All Might in awe of the sight before him. It was intoxicating seeing the monster that murdered his friend desperately try to fight back against something he could never beat. The rest of the heroes that just arrived were confused as to why the kidnapped child was fighting the villain alone. Endeavor angrily stomped toward All Might. What the hell are you doing letting the victim deal with the villain you're supposed to defeat? I believe that young Midoriya has it handled. The hell he does. Endeavor rockets himself towards All for One to punch him, but he was quickly batted away by All for One trying to deflect the beams. That hot-headed idiot. Gran Torino went down to get Endeavor, but All for One saw this and sent an air cannon his way, but it was redirected by a portal into the sky, dissipating the clouds. All for One grit his teeth in anger. He despises not being in control and not knowing every piece on the board. He decided to let go and use everything he had to destroy this threat. With the combination of the most powerful quirks, he could muster mutating his body into a being without human features. It bounds towards Midoriya with a ferocious snarl crushing the concrete below him. The heroes seeing this rushed in to try and help, but each that got in the way and was knocked to the side. Even All Might behind the beast failed to hold it back using Black Whip as the quirk strands snapped from the pulling on All for One. The beast got above Midoriya as the world looked on in fear that a child would die on live national television. Midoriya pulls his arm back, gathering every quirk and adaptation that would empower his Blow Strength Enhancer X73, Muscle Augmentation X6, Speed Enhancer X75, Power, Velocity Manipulation, Kinetic Stockpile, One for All, Dark Cowl, Crush, Air Cannon, Spring-like Limbs, Body Bulk, Expand, Hypertrophy X5, and Kinetic Booster. His arm looked grotesque, a muscular limb covered in metal and arcs of green and black lightning, and an energy construct jet of flame boosting the limb forward. He punched All for One, blowing his new form away and leaving Viscera on the ground, but he wasn't done. A warp gate appeared in the way of the blast that got past All for One and sent it right back to him. Every bit of kinetic energy delivered by the punch was redirected into All for One from every direction possible. The heroes on the ground watched in awe at the display. The dust cleared, revealing a bloodied and battered All for One buried in the rubble. Midoriya walked up to him, looking down at his naked form. His body is full of scars from the fight with All Might. Grafted skin looked taut, pulling on the rest of his body. A hole in his neck, which once was connected to pipping in his mask. Good job, hero. Did it feel good to destroy all that I had prepared for the last 2 centuries? My defeat here means nothing. With me gone, the others will fight to take my territory. This fight was meaningless. Villainy will always persist for what is light without darkness. Then I will push them back to the depths they came from. They will fear the mere thought of acting in the light, believing that it will draw me to them. This is it then. Well, what are you heroes waiting for? Arrest me. Izuku kneels and touches his head. The contact sends both of them into Izuku's quirk realm. All for One opens eyes. He hasn't felt 5 years to see a grassy field with a single tree on a small hill. He touches his head with both of his hands and feels smooth skin. A gentle breeze blew through his short white hair. How? It's been a while since you've been here, All for One. He turns around to see Midoriya standing behind him, but as he is about to throw a punch, his arm is stopped by a force field. A lot has changed since you were last here, especially after I got One for All. You're All Might's successor, the 9th holder, and the last to hold One for All. All for One turns around to see the previous holders of One for All, the most important of which was his brother. Yoink. Yeah, it's me, Mugen. But how? I held you as you died. As Midoriya had told you, quirks are full of surprises. Power stockpiling. Quite the unique name it has. The user gets more powerful the longer they hold the quirk. Without melding with transfer, it would have been just that, a basic power accumulator. By turning into One for All, the stockpile's capabilities had expanded. The quirk kept a vestige of the past users, allowing a version of use to live on even after the original passed. Mugen takes a second to digest the information. Then why haven't you taken over the other users? You should know of my plans to prolong my life. Because One for All had yet to mature. It was only due to contact with 9th that changed us. Us? Behind Yoichi, the other holders of One for All appeared one by one, Mugen getting more and more annoyed with each one that appears. The final vestige appears as a flaming All Might silhouette. With Midoriya's help, One for All had reached singularity. It allowed our consciousness to reside in the quirk to observe the outside. It also gave us the ability to grant our quirks onto the latest successor. Mugen's eyes widened, finally having a concrete answer to how All Might had been able to use the previous holder's quirk. He had assumed that he was given the quirks as he had lost them to the brat. Why will the boy be the last? One for All has become too powerful for anyone to hold. Do you remember the fourth when you found him? Not exactly. I remember being angered that they had died before I could get to them. I thought that One for All had disappeared forever until the bald one showed himself. My body was deteriorating at a quick pace. I could only hold the quirk for 18 years in hiding, hoping to find a successor. Fifth was the one that tried to save me. Midoriya's quirk allows him to adapt to the deterioration, ensuring that he will not be affected by the drawbacks. And with the amount of quirks he currently holds, there wouldn't be enough time for the 10th to adapt to the quirk. Brother, I didn't want to see you down the path of a tyrant. I was too weak to convince you otherwise. But things are different now. My quirk has finally gotten strong enough to take you down, though I think Midoriya was more than ready to defeat you himself. All for One is silent, staring into space. The vestiges looked at him in that state. They had never seen All for One so solemn, a broken man, his plans laid to ruin around him. But he couldn't just leave it like this. Never like this. He tried to walk toward Midoriya, but his body froze as a text box appeared in front of him. Surrender? Why /in? This surprised him, and he looked up at the group. They were frozen. All except Midoriya, who walked up to him waiting for him to make a choice. It seems that this decision will decide his fate. And you will be unable to use any quirk or act in any way maliciously against others, even in self-defense. Are you sure? Why /in? Mugen was now scared. He hadn't felt that since he fought All Might. There was nothing he could think of that could get him out of this. He didn't want to risk lying to whatever this quirk was. And removing retaliation instinct. Mugen's head pounds in pain. It felt like red-hot needles dragging themselves all over his head. He tried to scream, but no sound would come out as he clawed at his head, leaving deep scratch marks which were quickly mended. His eyes turned bloodshot, tears of blood signifying his pain and anguish. Removing self-preservation instinct. The pain returned with a vengeance. The same pain coursed through his mind. The ordeal lasted a few minutes as he had lived a long and eventful life, trying to keep his empire together. Mugen saw bits and pieces of his life quickly flashing by, but he didn't have the time to ponder on them as his mind was changed permanently. He falls to his knees with his arms to his sides, hands lay limp on the ground. Slowly his eyes regained clarity as he stood up and time resumed. You will not see the end of me. Yoichi looked at him, sad that his brother was still as stubborn as he was in the past. Well, I guess that's settled. Let's get out of here. Midoriya opens his eyes back in the real world and takes the rest of All for One's quirks while only leaving behind Life Force, Infrared, and Super Regeneration. All for One taken. Rivet Stab taken. Hypertrophy taken. Forced Quirk Activation taken. Blood Change taken. Air Cannon taken. Spring-like Limbs taken. Airwalk taken. Impact Recoil taken. Infrared taken. Spear-like Bones taken. Scrap Armor taken. Bulk Up taken. Pain Blocker taken. Gigantification taken. Strength Enhancer X5 taken. Speed Enhancer X5 taken. Shock Absorption taken. The heroes got close to the barely conscious body of All for One. Sleep. All for One falls completely unconscious and is taken away by the police. The news helicopters landed nearby and ran up to All Might to interview him. Midoriya looked at All Might with weakness detection. Remaining quirk time, 0:28. Midoriya ran up to All Might and put his hand on his shoulder. All Might turns towards him. You're running out of time. All Might's eyes widen. All right, I believe that's enough questions for now. I'll need to get Midoriya checked out. All Might tried to fly off with Midoriya, but he was held down. All Might looked at him in apprehension and sighed. Smoke billowed from his body, concealing it from the cameras. The world watched on in confusion until the smoke cleared, revealing a small and emaciated man with deep sunken cheeks and eyes. I am here to tell you the truth. The reveal of All Might's condition was a shock to the world. The era of All Might was coming to a close. They asked how he had gotten in that state. The villain that was just defeated was the one that did this. Do you still remember the conference I held all those years ago? That was my first encounter with him. Does this mean that you will be stepping down as the number one? No, only a decrease in activity. I still have enough time to keep going, but that time has been getting shorter and shorter. Besides, I believe that other heroes are ready to take my place. Is that the reason you allowed the missing student to fight the villain? Part of it. I have fought the boy myself for his exam. He was more than ready to face a foe of such caliber. The reporter moves the mic to Midoriya. Any comment on that? I'm happy the number one trusts me to clean up his mess. Like you couldn't have finished the fight earlier. You wanted me to reveal this form. It's better if you revealed it. That way it lights a fire under the rest of the heroes. They have been a bit too comfortable supported by the symbol of peace. It's time they step up to the plate. Midoriya, I take it you don't agree that All Might should be the only hero on top. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, think about it. The peace of Japan has been held and maintained by a single man. A mortal man. We've all been relying on him to keep our streets safe and peaceful. When he finally steps down, crime will skyrocket. Without someone to stop them, they will be emboldened to act in the light. No man rules alone, and everyone must do their part to keep the peace. After the impromptu interview, Midoriya was taken to the ambulance to check for injuries. Finding nothing out of the ordinary, they give him a clean bill of health and let him leave. Midoriya immediately searched for the pussycats using search. Finding them nearby, he knocked and walked into Ragdoll's room. Midoriya? What are you doing here? Midoriya walks next to Ragdoll's bed. Just here to return something. Midoriya first gave her super regeneration to get her to full health, surprising the other pussycats, and returned her quirk. Search given. Ragdoll looked around in shock of her quirk returning. How? I took it back from him. Then, it's the same quirk as his. My quirk took his original quirk, which can take and give quirks. At the end where I was touching him, I took the quirks he had and left behind a few that kept him alive. Ragdoll leaped out of her bed and hugged Izuku, thanking him for getting her quirk back. The other pussycats join in for a group hug. The next few days were a bit weird. A lot more people recognized him on the street, asking for pictures and autographs. There was even merchandise of him on store shelves. The recording of the fight had been circulating on the internet with people analyzing it. Many had noticed the use of multiple quirks used by Midoriya. Most prominently, the portals used to redirect the final blow back into the villain. Many of the news stations had brought in experts to analyze the fight to discover the true nature of Midoriya's quirk, but many of their hypotheses were inconsistent until someone suggested something mind-blowing. He must be able to copy or unbelievably take quirks. That's why his quirk was similar to the villain's. In the video, the villain could be seen teleporting people in with a dark sludge-like substance, and Midoriya was able to do the same, albeit with a different color. The giant portal used in the final blow was not used by the villain, so I could be from another person. With the revelation, a new source of speculation erupted, theorizing where the quirks came from. One point of interest was if he was able to take quirks. Was that the reason he was in contact with the villain for a weirdly long time? What quirk could he have gotten from him? Building on that, was the villain able to take quirks? Soon enough, information on the villain had surfaced. He went by the name of All for One, the same as his quirk with the ability to take and give quirks. His age was unknown, but was estimated to have been born around the dawn of quirks. This fascinated many historians who wanted to speak to him to gather stories of the past before the rise of quirks, but unfortunately, the prison he was held in was not accepting visitors. This reveal confirmed the theories for many, but without concrete proof or an admittance. There was only speculation. Tenko and his crew, who were teleported to UA, were allowed to stay on UA grounds wearing anti-quirk cuffs. Nana had separated from Izuku, wanting to keep an eye on Tenko and to make up for lost time. The HPSC had wanted to lock them up the same as All for One, but Nizu pulled some favors to keep them in UA. Speaking of the HPSC, they had been keeping their eyes on Midoriya, having agents nearby wherever he was, but they never dared to get close to UA. They haven't tried to make contact with Midoriya directly, but that could change soon. Once UA had started up again, It turns out that Nizo had gotten permission to implement the dorm system he wanted after the kidnapping. Arriving at the new dorm building and coming through the front door into the lounge, Midoriya finds on the back of the door the rooms they were provided with. Midoriya's room was set especially aside in an envelope, and by the grace and generosity of Nizo, his room was located underground under the ground floor, covering the entire size of the whole building. Looking at the other's room, they were a tenth the size of his. Damn it, Nizo, you want the entire class to hate me. On the back of the floor plan for his room were the words, "You're my student, you can handle this much." With a sigh, he takes the elevator down into his new residence. Going down, he sees some stairs and a single reinforced door with a randomizer keypad with a note on it. Press both top corners of the door frame with black whip. Sure enough, there were two tiny pinholes that when pressed caused a small panel on the wall to flip over, giving him another letter and a green metallic bracelet. He opened it, and it explained the door security measures. Oh, and Melissa left a little gift when she saw that your costume breaks routinely during every fight. Midoriya put on the bracelet and turned it on. It expanded and wrapped around his body, having a similar look to his previous hero costume. It was a weave of dark metallic green bands wrapped around his body. He pinched onto the part of the costume on his arm and was only able to dent it after putting a lot of force into it. The raised dent was quickly mended as the suit's bands pulled tautly. Happy with the results, he uses today's code to unlock the door, which just so happens to be "Hope you enjoy your stay." Walking in, he sees a large lounge with a large TV and a remote on the coffee table. Behind the couch to the left was a dining table, and behind that was a kitchen. Directly across from him was a long hallway leading to his bedroom, a bathroom, laundry, and a gym/quirk testing room. Walking into his bedroom, it was furnished modestly. Well, modestly for Nizo, as a state-of-the-art supercomputer made using quirks was displayed prominently in the room. Midoriya explored the rest of his new living quarters, and surprisingly, it was quite normal, not counting the quirk-reinforced gym. Midoriya went back up to the lounge to see that everyone was gathered there. "Hey Midoriya, didn't know you were already here. Where is your room? We couldn't find it on the list." "I'm in the basement. I think Nizo overcompensated after the kidnapping." "Cool. Can we come visit?" "Hey, you can't just barge into someone's room like that. You know what, how about we have a little competition? We go into everyone's rooms and vote on the best room in the dorm. You losers have fun with that, I'm going to bed." Bakugo walked away. Kirishima tried to get up and get him but was stopped by Midoriya. "Don't bother, he's really strict about his bedtime." "Alright, no Bakugo, let's go check everyone's rooms out." The class decided to leave Midoriya's room to last and started on the top floor on the boys' side. The rooms were a window to each person's psyche. The girls particularly enjoyed the confectionaries prepared by Sato. They got into the elevator and went down to the basement and saw the security door. Geez, you weren't kidding about Nizo overcompensating. Walking in, they found that Midoriya had a whole apartment for himself. Even a private gym which Kirishima asked to use sometime. After checking out the place, they returned to the lounge to announce the winner, who was Sato, who had 5 votes. The boys argued that they were bribed by the food, which was vehemently denied. As it was getting pretty late, everyone excused themselves and went to bed. Midoriya woke up early the next morning and did his daily routine. Morning classes were about to start, so he went to his gym to test out the quirks he had gotten during the whole kidnapping. The first one was Burst, where he could feel a bubbling under his skin. He focused on the feeling and directed it into his finger, causing it to explode into viscera and denting a practice dummy. He then tried double, cloning himself. The clone, as it turned out, was just an exact copy of himself, quirks and all. He tried to take the quirks from the clone, but nothing came out. He then snapped the clone's finger, and it turned. This continued for the rest of the morning, but many of the quirks were purely for battle, though he hadn't been able to test out the forced quirk activation as he had no one to test it on. Afternoon. The class was gathered in the gym Gamma with Aizawa, Midnight, Cementos, and Ectoplasm. They were told that the original goal of the training camp was to help the class prepare for their provisional licenses. For the next 10 days, they were tasked to create their ultimate moves, as it will be essential in tackling the exam. But Sir, doesn't Midoriya already have one with the portals? To extenuate their point, Midoriya picks up a rock and throws it in the air. He flicks at it and uses his portal to redirect the extra force back at it. After the energy ran out, the rock was turned into a fine mist of dust that was blown away. While that is an ultimate move, it doesn't hurt to create new ones. Anyway, since you have one Midoriya, did you think of a name for it? I was thinking of calling it Wasteless. I'm not exactly in love with the name, but it's the best I've got. Then what about the 4 extra arms you grew? Still working on that. I was thinking of calling that Inherited Wrath, though just having 6 arms doesn't live up to the name. Alright everyone, let's get to it. The rest of the class was spent with each student either figuring out new moves or improving their quirk control. All Might had shown up in the middle of the class to help supervise and to see how the other teachers teach. After training, Midoriya had been curious as to what happens in the development studio, as he had been hearing explosions from there every time he was passing by, and as Uraraka and Tenya were going there for costume upgrades. As they got close to the door, preemptive warning went off, so Midoriya kept Uraraka and Tenya from moving closer. A sudden explosion goes off, launching the metal door to the room to fly off. Midoriya caught the door using telekinesis, while also grabbing the person flying with the door by their collar. Potency increased. Headache resistance. Thanks for the save, Greenie. The person he caught was a short, mature-looking girl with pink hair styled into thick dreadlocks. She was wearing some weird goggles, a black tank top, and some coveralls tied around her waist. Power Loader walked out of the studio staring angrily at the pink-haired girl. Hatsum, I swear to God, if you make another thing that explodes, I'm revoking your rights to the support studio. But how would I know if I was doing it right if it doesn't blow up once or twice? Besides, you would have thrown me out if you could. Power Loader turned to Midoriya and his group. Well, I guess you're here with some changes. Come on in. The 3 of them walked into the studio. It was a large, messy workshop with a bunch of unfinished projects strewn around the work tables. In the corner was a huge pile of inventions. So what needs changing? I'm looking to make the cooling on my calves better, and I want something to get rid of my headache. Then what about Midoriya? Oh, I just came because I heard the explosions and wanted to check the place out. As they were speaking, Hatsum had been eyeing the green wristband on Midoriya's wrist. Hey, Greenie, where did someone like you get that? A friend gave it to me. Can I touch it? Before he could respond, she was already holding his hand up to get a better look at the wristband. She was prodding at it to get it to do something, but was getting more frustrated that nothing was happening. Midoriya, seeing this, activated the bracelet, causing it to expand and wrap around his body. Hatsune watched in fascination and excitement at the transformation. Once that was complete, she began to feel up the suit. She looks back up to Midoriya. You have to let me meet your friend. Better yet, we're friends now. Anything you need, just give me a call and only me. Midoriya nodded slowly with a placating smile and looked to see Power Loader with his head in his hands. Her name is Mei Hatsum. She's in the support course and hasn't left the development studio since she's got here, but some of her inventions have potential, so Nizu likes her. Hatsum, we also needed some improvements to our costumes. She turns to Ida, and Uraraka looks right at them in surprise. Oh, Engine Boy and Bob Cut, when did you get here? The 2 of them almost fall over hearing that. I want a better cooling system for my engines, and Uraraka needed a way to get rid of her headaches. Then why didn't you say that sooner? Come on, I have so many babies to show you. Hatsum showed them many of her so-called babies. Some of them were pretty interesting, but as they were prototypes, many were liable to explode at random. The 3 left the development studio having been told that the babies would be made in due haste. Days pass as the time for the Provisional Hero License exam is here. The class got off the bus as they arrived at the National Dagoba Arena. Aizawa told them that if they complete the exam, they will be semi-pros, and the first step to becoming a hero. Kirishima, getting hyped, yelled out, "Plus, Ultra!" A large student with an excited face, but into the chant. He was wearing the uniform for Shiketsu High School, which consisted of a white button-up shirt, black pants, and their school hat. One of his classmates speaks up. Urashi, you shouldn't barge into people's chant like that. Urashi turns to Class 1A and apologizes loudly. I am so. To show his guilt, he bowed and slammed his head into the pavement, cracking it. Sorry. It's just great to see the future heroes from UA. I've always wanted to say the school chant. That is Inasa Urashi. He was one of the recommended students who had passed their exam but decided to not join UA. As the class pondered the reason why he left, Aizawa was suddenly hugged from behind by a woman with orange gloves and bandana and green hair. Did you miss me, Shota? Get off me. Sigh this ib. Miss Joke glad to meet you. Eraserhead told me a lot about you. Usually he would have expelled some of you by now, but seeing that you're still here he must have taken a liking. A group of students in gray shirts and brown trousers filled behind her. Oh, this is my class from Ketsubutsu High. Hi, I'm Tatame Nakagame and he's Yoshindo. Nice to meet you all. Shindo introduced himself with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This was noticed by Midoriya, Todoroki, and Bakugo. Bakugo confronted him. Your eyes don't line up with your smile. And you're as ferocious as they say. Get ready for the exam. Aizawa leads his class into the arena as Ms. Joke notices that Aizawa hasn't told his class an important fact about these tests. The class was gathered into a large rectangular hall. In the front of it was a podium with a tired-looking man with beige hair wearing a suit. He yawned as the students gathered. Once everyone had gathered, the doors of the room were slammed shut, which alarmed the students and jolted the tired man awake, and seeing that everyone was here began to speak tiredly. Hello everyone. My name is Yakumura Mera. I'm a yawn worker from the Hero Public Safety Commission. They have been working us to the bone. We do not have enough people for this, but as they say, the show must go on. Today's test is a free-for-all. With the amount of incidents nowadays, the commission is using this test to filter for speed. Only the first 100 students will pass on to the next round. Everyone will be given 6 red balls and 3 targets which will be placed on the body to represent weak points. If all targets are hit, you are out. Each student needs to eliminate at least 2 students to pass. Only the last hit counts. I wish you all happy hunting. As Mera says this, the walls of the hall crack and fall open, revealing that the hall was built in the middle of the arena. Midoriya activated his hero costume and placed the 3 targets at the center of his chest. He grew his wings and used Multiply to grow 2 pairs of arms from his back, his suit accommodating with the changes. Bakugo and Todoroki immediately left to find other students. Everyone, we need to stay together. I'll fly up and be lookout. Before Midoriya could get far, the students from Ketsubutsu surrounded the class led by Yoshindo. It seems like your teacher didn't tell you. Everyone will be gunning after you. You're UA after all. We need to eliminate the strongest competition. Thanks for the compliment, but I think you underestimate us. It's been a long time since the sports festival. Shindo places his hands on the ground, causing it to vibrate and break apart, making the ground unstable. Most of the class was trying to balance themselves. The other classes threw their balls right at them. Midoriya, seeing the onslaught, raised his hand. Everyone cover your ears. Jiro immediately plugged her ears, knowing what was coming. Midoriya snapped his fingers, sending a shockwave that repelled all the balls back at their attackers. Izuku Midoriya passes the first part of the exam with 3 eliminations. Please proceed to the waiting room when you are ready. Fact. Momo looked up to see their attackers on the ground. Thanks, Midoriya. I guess we'll see you in the waiting room. What are you talking about? I staying to support you guys. I'm just hanging back to make sure all of us make it. What about Bakugo and Todoroki? I'm sure they can handle themselves. The class continued as a group. Midoriya took to the air and scouted the area for other groups. They got a few eliminations, but it was slow going. Getting worried they all won't pass, Momo suggested that they split up, which means Midoriya won't be able to support all of us. You guys sure you've got this? We still want to prove ourselves as real heroes, and I think the judges will think you're carrying the class. Fact. Fair enough. Show them what you've got. I'll see you guys later. Midoriya files up and blasts away, leaving the class to pass in a way they can be proud of. Arriving at the waiting room, he retracts his extra limbs and sees the other students that passed. Inesa, in his warm-looking hero costume, walked up to him. Hey Midoriya, you're finally here. You're the first one from UA that showed up here. Fact. Really? I would have thought that Bakugo or Todoroki would have made it here first. Inesa's expression shifts slightly at the mention of Todoroki, which Midoriya picked up on. I take it you don't like Endeavor, or at least his family. Inesa was surprised he noticed. Yeah, I was a fan of him once, but after meeting him, I just couldn't support a man so cold. Well, they say never to meet your heroes, but don't let that one experience change how you look at them. Did Todoroki remind you of him? He did. When I went to greet him during the recommended exam, he blew me off with the same look his father had. That made me reevaluate going to UA. Well, I can't really blame you for being put off by the Ice Prince's demeanor. He hasn't changed much since you've seen him. Still has the cold gaze he gives everyone. You've seen the sports festival, right? Yeah? Well, during my fight with him, I tried to see why he was so distant. It turns out Endeavor was more of a monster than we realized. Then what they said on the news has some truth to it. I heard it from him, but I can't just take the word of one person. We'll need to hear from the other members of the Todoroki family. It was at that moment when Todoroki arrived. Inasa kept an eye on him as Todoroki walked to a corner of the room, not speaking to anyone. He really is still the same. He didn't even come speak to you. Don't hold that against him. He still has time to change. And what if he never does? He'll just become Endeavor number 2. We can make sure he does change, or keep him in line if he doesn't. All right. Pretty soon the rest of the class began funneling in. Many of them were a little battered, but none worse for wear. Their attention was suddenly directed to a screen. The buildings around the arena suddenly exploded and turned the entire place into a disaster zone. A few people could be seen crawling out of the rubble and yelling for help. This is the second and final part of your test. The arena has had a disaster, and your goal is to rescue the civilians played by the Help Us company. They will be grading you all on how the rescue operations are run. Your job is to assess the situation and respond to it accordingly. The scenario is that a terrorist attack has happened and first responders are held up. It is up to the heroes to save as many civilians as possible. The test begins now. The students hearing this rushed out to find the civilians. Momo, could you make us some comms? We'll need to talk to each other so we don't waste time looking for lightly injured. We prioritize the rescue of serious injury as they have the least amount of time. As Momo was making comms, Midoriya decided that this would be the best time for double. Creating 2 clones of himself, they already knew what to do as they began doing the same thing. When they had a few tins of them, the original spoke up. I'm the original. I made you all not have the targets on your chest from the first test. Go and find the civilians. I'll help organize the rescue. They all nod and fly in different directions. Hey Midoriya, couldn't you just warp all the civilians out like you did in Kamino? I could, but you all still need to pass, so get out there, or stay to help treat the injured. The class makes their way into the city as Momo hands out the comms. The clones were working fast and were bringing back their saves. Most of them had broken limbs or were bleeding out. Some of the clones stayed to treat the injured, and the rest went out for the less injured ones. Many of the civilians were gathered together when reports of the terrorists who were played by Gang Orca and his agency were received. Midoriya looked out into the arena and used Quirk sight to scan for Gang Orca. Finding him, he raised his arm and pointed his finger in his direction. A dark ball surrounded by black lightning appeared at the tip of his finger. Impure beam plus dark ball plus dark cowl. A dark beam shoots out from the ball across the arena seen by the students on the ground. Hitting its target, it explodes, sending liquid concrete around. Seeing that Gang Orca had deflected the beam, Midoriya decided that it was time he moved himself. Momo, do you think you can handle things here? I've got this. Just go. Midoriya nods with a small smile as wings burst out from his back and blasts off to the location of the terrorist. Arriving at the scene, he sees Gang Orca fighting off Inasa and Todoroki. The 2 of them were not working together and arguing, which Orca took advantage of by attacking from behind Todoroki, launching a sonic wave at him. Midoriya jumped in front of it and took the hit using his wings. Todoroki, you need to focus on the task at hand. Stay out of my way. I've got this handled. Doesn't look like it's seeing that I'm here, and you 2 bickering doesn't help anything. Gang Orca's sidekicks shot their cement gun at Midoriya, who allows them to completely encase him. With him taken care of, we can deal with these heroes easily. Before he could get close, Midoriya wrapped Todoroki and Inasa to the rescue area. Confused, he looked to Midoriya's concrete cocoon, which quickly cracked and blew apart, sending the debris at the terrorists. Midoriya grabbed Gang Orca and took him into the sky. The hero looked around at the destroyed environment in the arena. Midoriya lands both of them far away from the civilians near where the terrorists first appeared. You think this will stop us, hero? Just moving me won't stop my goons. Oh, it won't, but it will reduce their morale if their leader is gone. Midoriya placed his hand on his head. Sleep. Echolocation adapted. Midoriya looked around to see some of his sidekick hidden around, trying to find a way to release their boss. Midoriya grows some limbs, opens multiple warp gates to the sidekick's location, and stuck his hand through to grab them. Sleep. The intercom suddenly comes on. Test complete. All civilians have been retrieved. Please proceed to the waiting room. Well, guess we're done here. Burst. The Midoriya clones around the arena pop like bubbles, shocking a few who didn't know it was a clone. The students gathered in front of a large board. The names of those who have passed the exam will appear on the board. The names are arranged alphabetically. The students gathered around the board and looked for their names. Izuku found his own easily enough, but Bakugo and Todoroki weren't there. The two of them seemed distraught at the sight of their missing names. Inasa slammed his head on the floor again, apologizing for messing up the exam for Todoroki. He doesn't even acknowledge the gesture, his eyes clouded over looking at the board. The ones who passed will be receiving their provisional license, which allows you to act as heroes in emergencies. To those who fail, there will be 3-month-long remedial course as a second chance to get their license. Each of the passing students was given their license and an evaluation of their conduct during the exam. When a proctor got to Midoriya, they told him to follow them. Hey guys, I'll meet up with you later. The proctors need me for something. Oh, all right, Midoriya. See you later. Following the proctors, they brought him to a windowless room and sat him down on a metallic chair and sat across from him. So why all the secrecy? Mr. Midoriya, do you know what the commission does? What everyone else knows. You run logistics in the hero business, making sure everyone is paid and deployed to reduce the most crime. The commission is a lot more than just a logistics company. Our goal is the prolonging of the peace brought on by the rise of All Might. Now that he is operating at a lower capacity, the need for a new pillar has arisen. The commission believes you will be the one to succeed All Might. Fact. Midoriya looked at the man with a placating smile with a determined look. While I do appreciate you blowing smoke up my butt, but what is it you want from me? Or should I say, what does the commission want? What we want is simple. The continued peace of Japan that was once maintained by All Might. Fiction. We will give you a full hero license along with a year's worth of All Might salary. Fact. We will also allow you to retrieve some of the more volatile abilities we have in our care. Fact. The commission would allow me to sample your wares? Within this week if you agree. Can I see the contract? The agent placed a thick stack of documents in front of him along with a pin on the top page. Midoriya looked through it thoroughly. It looked very favorable, but considering their goals, this was a honeypot. I'll need a few days to decide. If that's all right? The agent seemed surprised by this, but they allowed him to leave, but not before giving him his provisional hero license. Midoriya got outside, and before meeting back up with the class, warped the contract into Nizu's office. Going back to the bus, the class looked at him with a curious aura. Hey, what did they pull you away for? They just wanted to give a more thorough review. They couldn't fit onto my evaluation. The answer assuaged their curiosity. Looking toward the back of the bus, Bakugo and Todoroki sit alone in their own row, staring into space with an empty expression. Midoriya got back to UA and excused himself to go and meet with Nizu in his office. Walking in, he sees him looking through the contract with furrowed brows. He looked up to see Midoriya enter his office. Midoriya, great to see you. They expected you to read through this. All the terms are somewhat fair, but some have been vague. Midoriya sat down on the sofa where a warm tea was waiting for him. He takes a sip as Nizu sets down the contract in front of him. Their offer is pretty solid. You become the new symbol of peace along with all the perks of being number one, though you will only gain the title when you get out of UA. In exchange for that, you must complete anything they ask for once every week. These tasks are not restricted, meaning there is nothing they can't get you to do. For the price of your freedom, you get the position of the greatest hero with their support. Fact. Is there nothing about visiting Tartarus? No, there isn't. Did they offer you their prisoners' quirks? Yes, they did. They must have expected I would sign with just the temptation of being a hero early along with the quirks. It would be a great boon to get you there with the commission's permission. I'll negotiate with them to see if I can loosen the shackles they plan to put you in. The next day, the class was waiting for the start of today's hero training. Aizawa walked in with 3 other upperclassmen. These 3 are UA's Big 3. They are the current strongest hero students in UA. Introduce yourselves. The guy with the indigo hair and elf-like ears looked at the class intensely, which intimidated some in the class. He quickly turned to face the wall. I can't do this. I keep picturing their heads as potatoes, but they still have eyes. Large, bulging, attentive eyes. Come on, Tamaki, you can do it. Just like we rehearsed. He turns to look at the class again, but quickly regrets it and looks back at the whiteboard while shaking his head. I want to go home. The periwinkle-haired girl patted his back. Okay. You don't need to do it. Ahem. This is Tamaki Yamajiki. His quirk is manifest. He's a bit shy, as you can see. My name is Nagire Hado, and my quirk is wave motion. We're all here to teach you about the work studies most of you will go on. Hey, pink girl, are your horns a part of your quirk? I don't. Do your engines grow back? They're actual. Why are you so angry looking? What did you call him? Why do you look frustrated? Todoroki looked at her silently. She suddenly sees Midoriya and, recognizing him from the news, tries to get to him, but is held back by the last member of the Big Three. Hado, please calm down. Stop putting down things people can't pick up. My name is Mirio Togata, and my quirk. I'll keep it a surprise. Anyway, as Hado said, we are here to teach about the work studies most of you will be going on, and the best way to learn it is by fighting me. The class changed into their gym uniform and gathered in Gym Gamma, standing in front of Mirio, excluding Todoroki and Bakugo as they hadn't earned their provisional licenses yet. Now that everyone is here, who wants to go first? Kirishima steps up to the challenge. The class began to slowly surround Mirio when suddenly his clothes fell to the ground and Mirio appeared to teleport through the class, hitting each of them in the stomach. Power. Mirio posed naked at the other end of the class now, standing in front of Midoriya. Why didn't you join in with your class? They definitely needed your help. Just wanted to see how you used your quirk worked, and I will say you have worked hard to make that quirk useful for a hero. Mirio lunged forward, his arm pointed at Midoriya's head. The arm goes through him, and Mirio uses his other arm to punch him in the gut. The fist makes contact, but Mirio recoils back, holding his bruised knuckles. Man, how are you so tough? Well, when you have taken hits by Prime Might, everything else is kinda weak. Mirio, while surprised, tried another tactic. He rushed at Midoriya again, phased his hand into his chest, and made his hand tangible on the other side, locking them together. At least that's what he thought would happen, but his hand was immediately pushed out when he turned off his quirk, pulling him closer to Midoriya, who took advantage of this by elbowing Mirio in the head. Mirio staggers back as a small amount of blood seeps from his head. Seeing this, Midoriya quickly swapped permeation with super regeneration to quickly heal his wound and swap them back. Wow, thanks for that. I feel like I just woke up. The class got up and stood in front of Mirio, holding their bruised bodies, while Mirio put his clothes back on. Now, did that give you a better idea about the work studies? What do you mean work studies? You just beat the crud out of us. Well, what did you think of my quirk? Your quirk is too strong, senpai. How does it work? Mirio's quirk is permeation. It allows him to phase his body so it becomes intangible, and if he deactivates his quirk in an object, it will repel him until he is out of it. The class was amazed by the quirk, complimenting that it was quite strong. Don't give the quirk too much credit. It took a long time to get the technique down. When I'm phased into an object, all my senses are removed until I get out of it. I learned how to take back control of my quirk during my work studies. I learned through experience, so I thought you all should too. The class now understood the reason why they were all punched in the gut. It was to realize that there was more to their quirks. Bakugo and Shoto looked at the scene with envy and FOMO. They felt like they were being left behind. The next day, Izuku was called into Nizu's office in the morning. When he walked into the room, there was an older woman with blonde hair in a business suit. Good morning, Midoriya. It is good you were able to come here this morning. This is the Madam President from the HPSC. Fact. The woman reaches her hand out, which was shaken by Midoriya. Nice to meet you. Ma'am, I assume this is about the contract your organization has given me. Yes, it is, Midoriya. Both me and the president have hashed out the details, and I believe you will like the terms. The renegotiated terms were indeed a lot better, as the commission had a lot less control over his actions. The tasks he had to do for them now excluded murder, sexual manipulation, quirk experimentation, and involvement with children. They could not have surveillance on him at all times, rather they will be conducting monthly audits to keep tabs on his activities. The audits will last for 5 years, after which they will be conducted annually for the rest of his hero career. With these terms, The benefits for Midoriya had to be compromised. He still was to be given a hero license, but he will not receive the salary of All Might. He was still allowed to enter Tartarus, which was scheduled in a few days. Midoriya whispered the terms as if he were reading them but used fact or fiction to confirm their validity. Thankfully, it all came up as fact. Having read through the contract a few times, he is told where to sign it. Madam President cordially took the signed contract and gave Midoriya his new license. It is great to have you on board, Invincible. An unsatisfied aura was around her as she left. Midoriya and Nizu were now alone in the office. So how many strings did you need to pull to make her so pissed off? More than you know, Midoriya. Your work studies are coming up. Did you have anyone in mind to work under? I was thinking of asking you. There has been a rise in the amount of trigger on the streets, and I want to help remove some of their suppliers. If they're not accepting, I'll just go with Miruko. She would be more than happy to have her training partner back. Nizu sits and ponders for a moment. Sir Nighteye has been cracking down on a Yakuza group called the Shie Hassaikai who have been distributing trigger into the black market. That would be great. Do I need to call him? Or who do you think I am? I'll handle everything. A few days pass and Midoriya was being escorted by a HPSC agent to the infamous Tartarus. They were currently driving on a suspension bridge toward a metal structure in the ocean. Getting near the entrance, the car stopped and the agent spoke to the guard. After the guards checked the car thoroughly, they let the vehicle through. After a few minutes, they arrive at the outskirts of the entrance to the underground prison. Parking the car, Midoriya is led through the prison after being searched. Walking into a visitation room, a prisoner is brought out blindfolded and deafened, wearing a straitjacket while strapped to a chair. Approach the convict. Midoriya walked toward him and grabbed onto his exposed neck. Despot taken. Thread creation adapted. Midoriya releases his hold, and the prisoner is quickly wheeled away. This routine continued for the next hour. Each prisoner took a few minutes to arrive, and either had a quirk which if released would harm a lot of people, or were actively detrimental to their quality of life or surroundings. Cannibalistic plants taken. Spore infection immunity adapted. Domination taken. Potency increased. Heightened mental acuity. Ice giant taken. Potency increased. Carrot cold immunity. Ignis taken. Potency increases. Heat immunity. Heatsink taken. Potency increases. Heat immunity. Astrape taken. Potency increased. Electricity resistance. Doppelganger taken. Potency increased. Chameleon skin. X-ray taken. Ice strain resistance adapted. Radiation resistance adapted. Ghost taken. Potency increased. Heightened mental processing. Pripyat taken. Potency increased. Carrot radiation immunity. Gentleman taken. Healthy skin adapted. Exponential movement taken. Muscle tear resistance adapted. Blade tooth taken. Potency increased. Biometal generation. Gas taken. Poison resistance adapted. Sedative resistance adapted. Muscle augmentation taken. Potency increased. Immense muscle growth. Toxic blood taken. Potency increased. Carrot acid immunity. Rockman taken. Bio-rock generation adapted. Ferrokinesis taken. Potency increased. Heightened mental processing. They said they were bringing the last inmate. The inmate they had just so happened to bring in was all for one. Midoriya, what a pleasure to have my jailer visit. So what is it you want? I'm here for a tasting. I'm sure you're familiar. Oh, they offered that to you. I'm surprised they let you near me, or do they know that I am now powerless? I wouldn't call you exactly powerless. After all, you need to be alive to be judged for your actions. You think they can hold me here? I'll be out sooner than you think. Then I'm sure you're more than fine with a little experiment. Midoriya grabbed onto his head, which shocked the guards, but they let him be. Midoriya tried out Dominant Ion on him. His hand glowed blue and marked All for One's face with a glowing blue handprint that disappeared. Midoriya let go and asked him a question. Who do you serve? The Viridian Emperor. And who is that? You, my liege. Why do you use that title? Who else but you to deserve such a title? Okay, this is getting weird. Dispel. What the hell did you do to me? Don't use that tone with me. Yes, my liege, stop it. Well, that's good to know. All for One was quickly sedated and pushed away. Midoriya was led out of the prison. All in all, today was a good day, and now he had a lot of quirks to play with. The next few days Midoriya figured out some of the quirks and listed them out. Despot. User releases thread that can take control of people's body. The controlled retained consciousness. Cannibalistic plants. Grows carnivorous plants using meat or blood. Domination. By touching someone's face using their palm can take full control of their psyche. Dispel removes effects, but control is easily reestablished. Ice Giant. Transform into a large ice golem. With training, size can be reduced until the body is covered in ice armor. Ignis. Fire generation 0 control, only creation. Heatsink. Passively absorbs heat from the surroundings, causing ice to form on nearby surfaces. Absorbed heat can be released in a shockwave. The absorption rate can be increased at will, but will always be active. Astrape. Lightning manipulation. Quirk synergy. One for all. Dark Cowl. Astrape. Zeus. Zeus. Ability to create, control, and manipulate lightning. Lightning appears blackish gold. Once activated, hair and eyes get a golden tint. Doppelganger. Allow user to change their appearance to any human shape or form. X-ray. Eyes produce electromagnetic radiation to see through objects. Objects are slightly irradiated upon use. Ghost. Become intangible and able to possess other living beings. Pripyat. The body emits a large amount of gamma radiation passively as long as the quirk is active. Gentleman. Others perceive the user as trustworthy to the extent that if there is a shadow of a doubt that the user is not at fault, then they will be believed. Exponential movement. As long as the quirk is active, any movement is multiplied exponentially. This means that a twitch can be a fully raised arm. The previous user was liable to tearing their tendons and breaking their bones with each and every twitch, even when sedated. Blade tooth. Teeth grow into large, long, sharp blades that pierce into targets. Gas. Body emits purple, poisonous sleeping gas. Toxic blood. User's blood has properties of fluoroantimonic acid, which can be thrown out via a cut. Acid is most effective on organic material. Rockman. The entire body becomes rock, which is as hard as diamonds. Ferrokinesis. Ability to telekinetically move ferrous metal. Quirk synergy. Metal manipulation. Ferrokinesis. Metal bending. Metal bending. Ability to control and manipulate metal. Midoriya was now standing in front of Sir Nighteye's agency, accompanied by Mirio. I'm happy you wanted to work with Sir Nighteye. You're going to have a great time with Sir. Seems you look at him highly. How could I not? He was the one who helped me with my quirk. I owe everything to him. He showed me that my quirk was more than just a party trick. The rest of the journey is silent as they now stand in the elevator. Before you go in, Sir is partial toward funny people. So you have to make him laugh if you want to work here. All right, thanks for the advice. Midoriya walks into Nighteye's office and sees a blue-skinned woman strapped to a tickling machine. Society without humor is worthless. Hey Nighteye, I see that you're still on your crusade. Nighteye turned around and looked at Midoriya with slight annoyance and resignation. Midoriya, great to see you again. Well, hearing what you're working on, how could anyone resist? Bubble Girl, Lemillion, could you excuse us? Bubble Girl was released from her torment, bowed to Nighteye, and speed walked out of the office, followed by Mirio, who gave a thumbs up to Midoriya before he got out the door. The door closed as Midoriya now stood across from Nighteye with his desk between them. Did Nizu tell you what he said to me? Not really, but with how serious you are, I can assume I'm already in. Yes. Nighteye takes a stamp out of his pocket, inks it, and stamps Midoriya's work studies form. Shie Hassaikai is a relative newcomer in the trigger trade. Their leader Kai Chisaki has been making moves to expand his business. Recently they have been involved with thieves going by Team Reservoir Dogs. There have also been rumors that he has a weapon that could take down any hero they could encounter. Sounds like a party is happening. Any intel on where it is happening? Unfortunately, an exact location has yet to be determined, but we do have a few areas where their goons tend to gather. Show me. Nighteye pulled up the information. It seemed that they predominantly gather in a few spots, with one having a high concentration of them, as a few goons seem to be patrolling a building. Shie Hassaikai uses the condemned office building as their headquarters. Fact. You can go home for today, Midoriya. I didn't plan for you to begin patrolling as I'll need to alter my schedule. It is still early in the day. Could I go with Mirio? I may have my license, but I haven't done a patrol before. If Mirio is up for it, then go ahead. Try not to do anything that will alert the Yakuza group. For an oracle, you really like to raise flags. Nighteye covers his mouth and composes himself. Just leave. Sure. See you late, Sasaki. Don't use my name. And here I thought you liked humor. Midoriya walked out of the office to Mirio, looking at him in suspense. So how did it go? I'd say it went well. Nice to be working with you, Lemillion. They shake hands and walk to the sidekick's office. There were 2 other sidekicks at their desks. One of them was Bubble Girl from before, and a person with a centipede for a head, who introduced himself as Centipeeder. After familiarizing himself with his new desk, he joined Mirio on his first patrol. During the patrol, people began to recognize Midoriya from his fight with All For One, and took pictures of him to send to their friends. The 2 of them continued on their patrol until a sudden crowd surrounded them. Mirio, not wanting to deal with it, phased through the crowd and appeared on the other side, while Midoriya just floated above the crowd, trying to calm them down and get them to disperse. During the whole kerfuffle, preemptive warning activated and a glass dart was shot at Midoriya, who caught the projectile and warped it to inside a drawer on his desk. The man with his gun still raised above the crowd looked shocked that his attack failed and tried to run, but he was slowed down by the crowd. Using Warp Gate, Midoriya grabbed him and pulled him through to him. Now in front of Midoriya, he tried to shoot again, but his gun was pulled out of his hand by Midoriya using ferrokinesis. The man was wearing a weird plague mask and was struggling to get free, saying that Midoriya was unclean. His quirk wasn't too impressive, as it was just a steady hands quirk. What did you try to shoot me with? Why the hell would I tell you, freak? Sigh. Let's get you to the station. Everyone, I'm leaving now, so you can all continue with the rest of your day. Midoriya opened a large warp gate and disappeared. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Mirio looking stunned. Did he forget him? A warp gate appeared under him, sending him back into Nighteye's agency. Midoriya was back in Nighteye's agency, writing the report for the incident today, guided by Bubble Girl. Midoriya had wrapped the dart from his desk to Recovery Girl. Whatever is in that dart can't have be good. Nighteye walked in with an annoyed face. Hey, boss, told you that was a flag. Did you at least get anything from him? Yeah, he had a dart gun that shot a syringe at me, but I grabbed it before I could pierce me. The dart is currently being examined by Recovery Girl. The assailant wasn't forthcoming with who he was working for, or what was it that he shot. Nice job, Midoriya. Hopefully, tomorrow will be more peaceful. Flag Sasaki. I told you to refer to me by my hero name. Where's the fun in that? Besides, whatever flag you've set has got to be about Shie Hassaikai. Are you sure you're not the one that has foresight? Sometimes I'm not sure myself. Hey Sasaki, can I borrow something? Absolutely not. I'm not making that mistake again. The next day, Recovery Girl had gotten the results of the contents of the dart. It was a blend of chemicals supporting a main ingredient. Blood. Blood from a biologically 6-year-old girl. The exact effects of the quirk were determined to be quirk nullification for a few minutes, which was a death sentence to any hero in a battle. The results were given to Nighteye, who informed other heroes to wear armored clothing and to be vigilant of anyone pointing a firearm at them. Midoriya was walking out of the agency when someone walking by recognized him. Seeing that, he immediately got back into the agency. Guess now is as good a time as any to test drive Doppelganger. The bubbling and writhing of flesh could be heard in the lobby. Midoriya's face shifted and molded. He now had longer jet-back, scraggly hair, red eyes, and a tired look not too dissimilar to Aizawa. His body lost some definition, making him look more frail. Flesh wrapped around his hero costume and turned into an armored suit with black gloves and dress shoes. Going to the nearby window to look at his new appearance. I look like a mini Aizawa. I should call this guy Akatani. Opening a warp gate, he teleported to a nearby convenience store's broom closet. Walking out, the employee was about to question him until Midoriya used Gentleman, which caused their whole demeanor to change. The employee now treated him like he was the store manager and let him leave without a fuss. Walking out of the store, passers-by didn't pay him too much attention, but when they noticed him, they gave him a polite nod. Seeing this, Midoriya decided to go search around the area to determine where and what forces Shie Hassaikai had. Walking around, he found a few of their goons and using gentlemen disarmed them enough to get them to reveal what they knew, which wasn't a lot, but their base was in a condemned building. Walking past an alleyway, a small girl with long white hair, red eyes, and a small horn growing out of her head ran up to him in fear, hugging him. She was wearing what looked like an old medical gown. Her arms and legs were covered in bandages, and she was barefoot. "Help me. It's going to be okay. What's your name?" "Eri. We need to go now. He's coming." "Fact. Hi Eri, my name is Invincible. Don't worry, I'll get you out of here." "Hey, hero." A tall man with auburn hair and golden eyes called out to him. He was wearing a plague mask, streetwear, and white gloves. "Thank you for taking care of my daughter." Fiction. She has a habit of running off to God knows where. Fact. Come on, we don't want to bother the hero too much, do we? Eri looks at him in hesitance and is about to pull away from Izuku, but he holds her close. "Do you really want to go back with him?" Eri is silent, looking down in apprehension. She looks back up to Izuku. "No." Fact. "Eri, listen to me. You know how this ends." Fact. Overhaul reached his hand towards Eri as Midoriya pulled her closer to him. "Sir, I would love to drag this fight out, but unfortunately Eri's safety is more important." A warp gate opens in front of Overhaul as a hand reaches through and grabs him by his face. Overhaul tries to resist by grabbing Midoriya's arm and disintegrating him, but it doesn't work. He let out gasping screams as domination did its work. Overhaul goes limp as he falls kneeling on the ground. Overhaul taken. "Who do you serve?" Overhaul looks at him in meek reverence. "The king in green. What do you desire from me?" "Oh, king." Eri looked at the sight in confusion. "Did you use this child to create the quirk nullifying darts?" "Yes, sire. I was able to create them using her blood and tissue. The ones I've given to my underlings are able to suppress a quirk for a few minutes, but I've been able to make permanent additions." Izuku cringed a bit hearing a Yakuza boss speak like that about what he did to her. Eri hid her face into Izuku's chest as her nightmare flashed through her eyes. Izuku slowly pats her back, calming her down while she clutches tightly on his chest. "Lead me to them. At once." "Oh, king. Please act as you did before. You don't want your subordinates to bother me, do you?" Overhaul's demeanor changes, becoming more calculating and cold. Midoriya grabbed him and returned his quirk for the time being in case he needed to use it. Eri had been hiding her face, now looked up to Izuku, who flashed an All Might-esque gentle smile. "Don't worry, I'll protect you. Sleep." She smushes her face back into the shape-shifted suit and falls asleep. Overhaul led him through some back alleys until they reached their compound. Two goons were guarding the door, discouraging anyone who comes by from getting close. As soon as they saw Overhaul, they opened the door without question, letting them in. "Gather the bullets, Mimic, and Chronostasis, and tell them to meet me in my office. We have a guest." The goon nods and runs off into the facility. Overhaul leads Midoriya into his office and tells him to have a seat. Using Overhaul on the floor reveals a heavy-duty safe embedded into the ground. Opening it, he takes out a back metal-lined briefcase and opens it in front of Midoriya. Checking the contents, he sees 5 glass vials kept safe in black foam padding. He warps the briefcase to his room in UA. Overhaul closes the safe and returns the concrete back to the ground. As if on cue, the people Overhaul had called entered the room one by one. They were shocked to see Eri asleep in a stranger's arms, but they couldn't question their boss, so they ignored it for now. "You all should have gotten here quicker. What would I do if a hero got here first? It seems that the boss is moody today. Sorry, boss, won't happen again. You all will make sure it does. We have an important guest to serve." "Serve?" Green bands appear around them and restrain them. They tried to scream, but their mouths were covered as soon as they opened them. Midoriya turned off Doppelganger and walked up to each one of them, including Overhaul, took their quirks and made them fall asleep. Overhaul taken. Crystallized taken. Quirk Synergy. Rockman. Crystallize. Diamond Head. Slosh taken. Confession taken. Strong Arm taken. Larceny taken. Food taken. Energy Suck taken. Mimicry taken. Chronostasis taken. Barrier taken. Wake up. Eri groggily opened her eyes to see that she was back in the base. She got a little scared seeing Overhaul's office, but the confusion of seeing the bad men tied up and asleep eased her mind. "Hey, Eri." She looked at Midoriya, confused that her hero had changed form. "Invincible?" Yeah, it's me. I surprised you still recognized me. Invincible is my hero name. Do you want to know my real name? She nods. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Could you tell me why Overhaul hurt you? Midoriya was using confession. He said my quirk was cursed, that he would keep the world safe for me. Do you want me to take your quirk? Eri looked at him in apprehension. I'm not using the blood they took from you. I have the ability to take and give quirks. You can have one of mine. I can? Izuku nods. Please take it. Okay, I'll tell you what I have, and if in the future you want your quirk back, I'll give it to you. Eri nodded, and Izuku told her what quirks he had that were safe to use. She had decided to take dragon wings, which belonged to the white Nomu, back during the Hosu incident. Rewind taken. Dragon wings given. The back of her gown began to bulge, so Midoriya formed an energy knife to release the tension. Scarlet wings burst out of the newly opened holes. Eri looked at the shiny new wings in amazement and started flapping the wings, making her float out of Izuku's hands. She started to fly around the room but quickly got tired and was caught. The wings retracted back into her back as her eyes got tired. Eri, I'm going to call my boss to get him to capture everyone here. Is that okay? She nods. Midoriya calls Nighteye, who picks up quickly. Don't tell me Shie Hassaikai found you. I don't think you need to worry about them anymore. Midoriya, what did you do? I may have dismantled the Shie Hassaikai. So that's going to be a lot of paperwork. So, this was the end of part 4 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.